went from being a straight James Bond kind of show, and every time, each year, we'd have a new producer.
9 years after the death of Robert Vaughn, his family made a discovery that changed the way they remembered him. Inside the attic of his Connecticut home, covered in dust and time, they found several old boxes. They were filled with handwritten letters, film scripts, personal photos, and a set of audio tapes labeled only as "private for later." Among them was a note written in Vaughn's neat handwriting that said, "For those who wish to know the truth." His daughter, Cassidy, described that moment as both heartbreaking and healing. The items revealed a side of her father that no one had ever known, a man full of regret, love, and courage. These discoveries were not about fame or Hollywood success. They were about a life filled with struggle, self-doubt, and redemption. What began as a simple search through old memories turned into an emotional journey through the mind of a man who once ruled television screens. As the family listened to the tapes, they realized Robert Vaughn had recorded his final thoughts about fame, betrayal, and the price of being honest in a dishonest world. For millions who knew him only as Napoleon Solo from The Man from U.N.C.L.E., this discovery showed a different man, one who had quietly fought his own battles long after the camera stopped rolling. Robert Vaughn's story began in a modest apartment above a bakery in Minneapolis. His parents divorced when he was just 7, and his mother, a struggling actress, raised him with little money but endless determination. The smell of bread baking in the mornings was one of his earliest memories, reminding him that even in poverty, life could be sweet. Vaughn grew up with dreams far bigger than his surroundings. He performed small plays at school and loved telling stories on the radio, often imitating famous voices from shows like The Lone Ranger. His mother, Marcella, believed deeply in his talent and often told him, "You have a voice meant to be heard." But life wasn't easy. They moved often, and Vaughn was forced to grow up quickly. He worked odd jobs to help pay bills and spent nights studying by candlelight. Yet his passion for acting never faded. After high school, he attended college and joined local theater groups. His breakthrough came when a friend encouraged him to move to Los Angeles, where dreams were made and broken every day. There, he began taking small roles in television shows and student films. Every rejection hurt, but every no taught him to fight harder. Those early struggles shaped his confidence and gave him the emotional depth that later made his characters unforgettable. When Robert Vaughn landed the role of Napoleon Solo in The Man from U.N.C.L.E., everything changed. The show turned him into an overnight sensation in the 1960s, a time when television was shaping American culture. Vaughn's smooth voice, sharp looks, and charming personality made him one of the most beloved faces on TV. The character of Napoleon Solo, intelligent, fearless, and stylish, mirrored Vaughn's own personality. But behind that confident image, he often felt lonely and uncertain. Fame, he would later admit, didn't fill the emptiness he felt inside. Yet, he handled success with grace, refusing to be carried away by celebrity life. He read books between takes, wrote essays, and continued his education, earning a Ph.D. in communications. Few knew that while he filmed spy adventures on screen, he was studying political theories off camera. Vaughn's intelligence made him stand out in Hollywood, a place often more interested in looks than ideas. He built friendships with great thinkers, actors, and even politicians. But he also witnessed the darker side of fame, the pressure to stay relevant, the false smiles, and the endless rumors. By the time The Man from U.N.C.L.E. ended, he had seen enough to understand that success came with a cost, one he wasn't always willing to pay. What made Robert Vaughn different from most stars was his willingness to speak up when others stayed silent. In the late 1960s, during the height of the Vietnam War, Vaughn became one of the few Hollywood actors to openly criticize American foreign policy. His public speeches and university lectures made headlines, and not all of them were friendly. Many in Hollywood warned him that taking such stands could ruin his career. Vaughn didn't care. He believed that staying quiet in the face of injustice was a betrayal of conscience. He was invited to speak alongside political figures and academics, showing that he wasn't just an actor, he was a thinker, a man of principle. This courage, however, came at a price. Certain studios began avoiding him, fearing backlash. Friends distanced themselves, and for a time, roles became harder to find. But Vaughn's sense of purpose grew stronger. He once said in an interview, "If I lose everything because I told the truth, then at least I'll sleep well." That attitude defined his later years. He used his fame not only for entertainment but to push for truth and fairness, even when it meant standing alone. The tapes found in his attic years later revealed how much that period had affected him emotionally, showing his doubts, guilt, and pride for standing firm when it mattered most. Though Robert Vaughn was admired for his calm and charm, life behind the scenes was full of challenges. His first marriage ended painfully, and fame made it difficult for him to trust people. There were nights when he sat alone in his home, wondering whether his life had any meaning beyond the screen. He admitted in one of his recordings that he struggled with loneliness and self-doubt, often feeling disconnected from the world around him. "Everyone thinks the applause fills the silence," he said, "but sometimes it only makes it louder." In the 1980s, his career slowed down. Roles were fewer, and Hollywood had moved on to younger stars. He turned to writing and teaching, sharing his knowledge with students who admired his honesty. Financial losses and health problems followed, but Vaughn refused to give up. Even when doctors warned him about his declining health, he continued to work on film and TV projects. His last major role in the series Hustle reminded fans of his timeless presence and elegance. Co-stars often said that Vaughn brought calm and wisdom to every set he worked on. Behind that professionalism, though, was a man quietly preparing for the end, organizing his belongings, writing notes, and recording his final reflections that his family would one day discover. When his family finally played the tapes found in the attic, they expected simple memories, perhaps old interviews or diary-style recordings. Instead, they found Robert Vaughn reflecting deeply on his life, mistakes, and regrets. One of the most moving moments came when he said, "I spent years pretending to be brave when I was only trying to survive." He spoke of lost friendships, personal disappointments, and the guilt of watching others suffer during Hollywood's political blacklists. He admitted he had known about certain injustices but kept quiet to protect people he cared about. "I wasn't a hero," he said softly on one of the tapes. "I was a man trying to do what was right in a time when right and wrong were dangerous. Words." His daughter described listening to that confession as like hearing him speak from beyond the grave. These recordings revealed that Robert Vaughn had carried heavy emotional burdens for decades. They weren't scandals or secrets of crime. They were confessions of a man who had lived between truth and survival. Through his words, the family understood that his silence was not cowardice, but sacrifice. Those tapes turned out to be his final act of honesty, his way of leaving behind a complete picture of who he truly was. Not just the hero on screen, but the man who had quietly fought for integrity his entire life. Robert Vaughn passed away in 2016, leaving behind a legacy that went far beyond Hollywood fame. His life was a mix of brilliance and vulnerability, courage and fear, fame and solitude. The materials found in his attic gave the world one last chance to understand him fully, a man who had been both hero and human. His daughter later donated many of the letters and tapes to a historical archive, ensuring that his voice would never be forgotten. Today, when people watch his performances, they see not just an actor, but a storyteller whose life mirrored his art, filled with intelligence, charm, and emotional honesty. Vaughn once said, "If my work survives, then a part of me will too." And it did. His films continue to inspire, his interviews are studied by young actors, and his courage to speak his mind remains an example for many in the industry. The attic discovery didn't just uncover lost memories, it uncovered a truth about what it means to live authentically. In the end, Robert Vaughn's story reminds us that behind every famous face is a human being searching for peace, forgiveness, and meaning. And sometimes the most powerful confessions aren't made to the public, but whispered into a microphone, waiting to be found long after we're gone. While Robert Vaughn was known for his intelligence and charm, those who truly knew him understood that he was a deeply private and often lonely man. Fame had given him everything he once dreamed of: admiration, comfort, recognition. But it also took something away: peace. He had many friends in Hollywood, but very few who truly understood him. He often said that the higher he climbed, the fewer people he could trust. Among his close friends were Steve McQueen, Natalie Wood, and David McCallum. Yet even with them, Vaughn maintained a certain distance, as if afraid to reveal too much. His relationship with Natalie Wood was especially complex. They shared a strong emotional bond, but timing and circumstance kept them apart. Vaughn's loyalty was legendary. When McQueen struggled with personal issues, Vaughn stood by him despite pressure from studios to distance himself. "Steve was a wild spirit," Vaughn once said, "but he had a heart most people never saw." In his personal life, Vaughn found lasting happiness when he married Linda Staub in 1974. Unlike many Hollywood marriages, theirs was quiet and steady. They adopted 2 children, Cassidy and Matthew, and Vaughn found joy in being a father. His family became his anchor. Even when work took him across continents, he called home every night, sometimes just to say goodnight. But behind that devotion was an emotional weight he never fully revealed. The tapes found in his attic included moments where he spoke directly to his children, expressing love and regret for the times his career kept him away. "If I could live again," he said on one recording, "I'd choose more dinners with you instead of red carpets." Those words became some of the most touching parts of his final message. Proof that the man who played heroes on screen was, above all, a loving father trying to make peace with his past. Robert Vaughn's career could have been even greater if he had chosen to stay silent. But silence never suited him. Throughout his life, he spoke his mind, even when his opinions angered powerful people. During the turbulent 1960s, when America was divided over politics and war, Vaughn became one of the first actors to publicly question U.S. involvement in Vietnam. He delivered speeches at universities and appeared on talk shows, urging people to think critically about government actions. This was brave and dangerous. At that time, being outspoken could destroy careers. Vaughn received threatening letters, was labeled unpatriotic by some, and found himself excluded from certain Hollywood circles. But he refused to back down. "If my voice shakes when I speak," he once said, "it only means the truth is heavy." His courage was not just political, it was moral. Vaughn also spoke out about the dark side of Hollywood, the manipulation, the casting couch scandals, the way power was abused behind closed doors. He helped younger actors navigate the industry, warning them about contracts and false promises. He quietly supported several colleagues who had been blacklisted or unfairly treated during the McCarthy era. On the tapes discovered in his attic, Vaughn confessed how hard those years had been. He had to choose between loyalty to friends and protecting his own family. In one emotional passage, he said, "I signed a contract to act, not to lie. But sometimes in this town, the two become the same thing." That line alone captured the tragedy of a man who wanted to stay pure in a world that rewarded compromise. To his fans, Vaughn was a hero on screen. To those who knew his heart, he was also a hero off screen, one who dared to tell uncomfortable truths. As Vaughn grew older, he learned that fame was not a shield against loss. He saw many friends pass away too soon. Natalie Wood's tragic death, McQueen's battle with cancer, and countless others who had once shared his laughter. Each loss left a mark. In interviews, he often spoke of the fragility of life in Hollywood. "This town," he said, "builds statues of you in the morning and forgets your name by nightfall." That reality never made him bitter, only wiser. Vaughn used those experiences to mentor younger artists. He often told them, "Don't chase the spotlight, chase the truth." During the 1990s, Vaughn reinvented himself. He appeared in British television shows and stage plays, earning new fans in Europe. His role in Hustle brought him renewed recognition, and audiences loved seeing his effortless charm return to the screen. Yet behind the smiles, his health was slowly declining. He fought cancer privately, refusing to let it define him. Co-stars later recalled how professional he remained, memorizing lines perfectly, cracking jokes, and staying late to help others rehearse. When he could no longer act, he turned to writing. His memoir, A Fortunate Life, was his attempt to share lessons from decades of triumph and pain. In that book, he described fame as a bright